welcome to get online and make a donation, anything that you can. And if you don't know the link, you can go to our website. The link is right on the front page. It'll take you right there. You just find you should go right to our page. If you don't, you can go to the Big Give site and navigate over to our page. But we would welcome anything you can do for us to support conservation in Comal County. Lovely. Who is that? Whose music am I hearing? Oh, all gone. Okay. Well, without further ado, I would like to introduce our guest speaker. I am very pleased tonight to be able to welcome Suzanne Scott as our guest speaker. As the Texas State Director for the Nature Conservancy, the world's most respected conservation organization, Suzanne leads the efforts of this powerful force of good to help solve problems at home. Yes, Suzanne is a Texan, raised in San Antonio, and I expect, although we'll have to wait and ask her later, she probably did some tubing on the Guadalupe as a child. Don't tell us yet, Suzanne. Prior to accepting this position in Texas with the Nature Conservancy last year, Suzanne enjoyed a 20-year career with the San Antonio River Authority, or SARA as we call it, serving 13 years as its general manager. Her work there helped the River Authority advance its mission to inspire actions for healthy creeks and rivers within the San Antonio watershed and enhance access, economic development, and environmental restoration of 13 miles of the San Antonio River, including the completion of the Museum Reach and the Mission Reach of the San Antonio River Walk. The completion of the river's restoration served as a key factor for the designation of the San Antonio Missions as a UNESCO World Heritage Site in July 2015. That's quite an honor. Through her leadership, several other parks throughout SARA's 4-county district were developed, providing more public access and promoting better stewardship for rivers and creeks throughout the basin. Also under Suzanne's leadership were lasting improvements SARA made in the development and implementation of flood mitigation projects and water quality improvements to support sustainability throughout the San Antonio River Basin. She also played a leading role in advocating for and funding projects to increase use of low-impact development and other stormwater management practices. She has also served as chair of several regional and statewide stakeholder boards charged with developing the state water plan and ensuring the environmental protection of rivers, bays, and estuaries. Now, as the state director for the Nature Conservancy, Suzanne establishes conservation strategy and public policy leadership to protect the state's cherished landscapes and support ecology, economy, public health, and equality. Working closely with a talented staff of nearly 70 people, she oversees the execution of landscape-scale conservation efforts, freshwater protection, critical marine protection measures in the Gulf of Mexico, as well as the development of sound science and policy solutions to address climate change. With the Nature Conservancy, Suzanne will lead philanthropic efforts to preserve biodiversity in Texas while advancing projects and building support for environmental protection and the future sustainability and resiliency of people and nature. We're so pleased to have you with us tonight, Suzanne. Please take it away.
Well, thank you very much for that kind introduction, and it's really great to be here. I see a couple of names on here that I recognize, Diane Wasnage and of course Helen, and several others that I'm very glad to be in your midst of people that I respect so much. As was mentioned, I worked at the River Authority for 20 years, so anything about the San Antonio River, I feel I can speak with authority, and I've only been in this position with the Nature Conservancy since last November. So I'm coming up on a year here in the next couple of months. So as you know, being new to an organization, I I may not be able to answer all of your questions tonight, but if there is something that I will, that you want to know that I can't answer, then I will definitely get back and make sure that I get the information to you. But I'm going to do my best to share with you the information that I think will be of interest to you. When Helen and I spoke about what we wanted to talk about here today, we really wanted to talk about, how to use nature to build resiliency. And as y'all know, and this is not, I'm not telling you anything you don't know. I mean, with Texas being owned 98% privately owned, which we are very proud of in Texas. Private land ownership is a hallmark of our heritage and culture in Texas. It requires, to protect these landscapes, it requires a lot of work with individuals and making sure that we talk to and educate landowners about the importance of conservation. And that has been something that the Nature Conservancy has been involved with for a long, long time. Oftentimes we call it sort of community-based conservation. It is one person at a time working together, trying to figure out exactly what we can do together to protect very important land in Texas. So I'm going to show you, I'm going to have a PowerPoint presentation. I'll go over a few things that we've accomplished, and then maybe we can just have a dialogue and talk a little bit about what we're doing and any questions that y'all have, and we can work together to figure out maybe some next steps that we can work on together. So I'm going to share my screen. Hopefully this will work, and we'll see what happens here. Okay. So let me get my stuff together here. Can y'all see that okay? Thumbs up, everybody? All right, great. Hold on. Got to see why it's not advancing. Just a second here. Hold on. I'll just do it this way. All right, so one thing that we have worked on quite a bit, and many of you may be familiar with, is the Nature Conservancy has been involved really since the beginning on the Edwards Aquifer Protection Program here, primarily in Bexar County, but that stretches, as you can see in this illustration here in this map. The program started primarily in Bexar County, and then over its history of its development, it's expanded west and done many conservation easements and acquisitions to protect the recharge zone over the Edwards Aquifer. And you can see here in the legend that the whole program has protected over 164,000 acres. And this is changing, monthly, daily, practically, because there are so many acquisitions that are happening. The Nature Conservancy is one of the, oops. Why did that happen? Hold on. I didn't want that to happen. Something weird is happening with this PowerPoint. Hold on a second. Okay, there. What you can see here in the legend that the Nature Conservancy is of that 164,000, we've been involved in 88,000 of those acres. And, the program itself is an amazing program that's been going on for quite some time. And you can see there's still gaps in the acquisitions, but all of these acquisitions that are done on the Edwards Aquifer are based on science. They have a science team that looks exactly at what acquisitions will be the most beneficial from the perspective of recharge, if they have karst features, anything like that. And those are ranked. And then we work with the city of San Antonio to go out and acquire these easements. Green Spaces Alliance is another a local land trust that also helps the city of San Antonio in these acquisitions. So it's been very successful. The program has been funded for quite some time. Y'all may have heard more recently that the city has decided not to continue this program through the sales tax, because it's funded through a sales tax here in Bexar County in city of San Antonio. And they've decided not to continue the use of that sales tax for this purpose. They are shifting that sales tax to present first to do workforce training, and then we'll go to transit via Metropolitan Transit in perpetuity. So the funding for this program to continue is going to be coming at a slower pace, but it will be coming directly from SAWS, the San Antonio Water System, and they have funding that they will be using as part of their allocation that they would be giving to the city of San Antonio, will be going towards this project or this to future acquisitions. So again, at a much smaller funding level, but there will still be some continued funding. So there's been some talk about trying to move up into the contributing zone versus just on the recharge zone, but those activities and that conversation is continuing. And I can answer any other questions about that program, but I just wanted to use that one kind of as a starting point, because again, it shows that very successfully this program, the Edwards Aquifer program, is very well established, and it's the envy of many, many communities throughout the country, really, who have tried to use these kinds of programs to protect recharge areas over aquifers that are primary drinking water source to protect for water quality, and to hopefully stop development and contributes to the threats, water quality threats of that drinking water source. So again, very popular, and we can talk about it some more. Then here in Comal County, these are the type of projects that we've been involved in directly. I have some photos of these, but the El Rancho SEMA, we'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. We've got the Honey Creek project, which is the big one that's been in the news recently. You can see that. There it is. I don't know why there's a gremlin on my computer. And then we've got the Bat Cave. So and the Cibolo Bluffs, which is another area that we've protected. So let's go through these. So here's El Rancho SEMA. Y'all are all very familiar with this, I'm sure. This was a project that we assisted with. This park was a Boy Scout camp that many of you are probably more familiar with, given that this is right in your backyard. I was fortunate to go visit this place recently. It was absolutely gorgeous. And this is we acquired a property on behalf of a partnership that we have with Hays County. They went to get a bond referendum from the citizens of Hays County in order to pay us back for this acquisition. So there is a total of 176 acres of the 536 total is in Comal County, and we acquired this for about $13 million. So this property will eventually be given back to Hays County, will become a park and be accessible to the public. But this was a wonderful acquisition and shows what we do. The next this is the Bracken Bat Cave. If any of you have been up there, this has been a very interesting project that's gone on for several years. The TNC acquired 1,521 acres in 2014 as part of a GALO deal. It was a development deal that was going to happen right next to the Bracken Bat Cave that was going to threaten the Bat Cave and its protection. And so we wanted to make sure we had a good buffer to the Bat Cave. So we conveyed 760 acres of that to Bat Conservation International in 2017. And this project has really been very much of a labor of love, because we call it the trifecta, that it protects the bats, it also protects water, and it also protects the golden cheek warbler that is in this area. So we have habitat that is for those endangered species. I was just on a call today with Bat Conservation International. There's still more threats to the bats, and we are trying to make sure that as we look at this area, we can continue to protect this very important and very unique location. This is the largest gathering of mammals on the planet, and that includes people all in one place. So this is pretty special that we have here. And of course, they migrate between Latin America and here. And I learned today that their agave is something that they need on their migratory path. And we're looking to see what we can do to provide agave to help the bats survive their migratory path. Very interesting. This is Cibolo Bluffs. This is the land that's adjacent to the bat cave that I mentioned that we acquired as part of that Galo deal. This was going to be developed into a large development, and we acquired this to protect it and have a buffer zone. But again, even adjacent to this property, there is still threats. If you go down the roads near Natural Bridge Caverns, I'm sure you see it all the time about the development that's coming in this area. Then this is Honey Creek. And this is really what we've been talking about more recently. As y'all are very familiar, Honey Creek is incorporated into the Guadalupe State Park, and this Honey Creek natural area is a pristine hill country stream. We wanted to protect this watershed. There was many people that were working on this before TNC got involved. So this is a collaborative effort for sure, with many people that have been very concerned about the threat that was of development that was happening kind of in the headwaters area. And we had the opportunity when originally we were part of the acquisition of the original tracts for the Honey Creek natural area back in the early 80s. And that became part of the Honey Creek natural area and part of the Guadalupe State Park. So we wanted to make sure that the work that we started with back in the 80s could still continue to be protected. So when we had the opportunity to work with the current owner of the piece of property that's adjacent to this, we wanted to see what we could do to assist. So we are in an option agreement with the owner of a piece of property that's adjacent to this called Honey Creek Ranch. And that is about 515 acres. And we are in an option to acquire that property. We're currently going through continued negotiations with the current owner and with the Texas Parks and Wildlife Department. Carter Smith is at the table with us. And we are working with that to permanently protect it. The reason that this became something that actually all the stars started to align is we had the willing seller. We also had the Great American Outdoors Act that was recently passed by Congress last session that provided the opportunity for more money to come to Texas Parks and Wildlife Department for these types of acquisitions. So it allowed for there to be much more public money available. So we are out, continuing our fundraising for the match, for the private match that's required to that federal dollar that flows to the state. We are also in the process of doing a conservation easement on a property that is known as the Honey Creek Springs Ranch. This is where the largest cave, I think it's called let's see what she says here. I think it's one of the largest caves, underground caves in Texas. And we are protecting that particular cave structure and the springs to Honey Creek through that conservation easement. So combined, that's where that protection is coming in for Honey Creek. So that is moving forward now, and we feel very confident that this is going to go through, but there's still some hurdles to come through, and we can talk more about that when we get into the Q&A. But it's gorgeous. It's a beautiful place. Then another place that we worked really hard is in the Pedernales River area. All of this is in that watershed. And of course, as you know, there's been a lot of threats to development with Dripping Springs and all of this sort of coming out of Austin. So we have quite a bit of conservation easements. We have protected about a little over 28,000 acres in this area. And I've been on some of these properties. They're gorgeous. The landowners are tremendous stewards of very critical habitat. And this has been something that we continue to put together over time to try to have more and more protection in this area. Here's the Hamilton Pool that many of you may be familiar with. Again, we provided some assist in protecting lands adjacent to this area. So again, a beautiful place that needs protection and deserves protection from encroaching development. And then here's the Pedernales State Park area, another beautiful place that many of you probably enjoyed with your families. Again, a protection in the watershed that we are working parcel by parcel, landowner by landowner, to try to make sure that we can protect this very beautiful resource as development continues to threaten in this area. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing, and if we need to go back to any of these maps, we can do that. But I just wanted to sort of open it up with talking about some of the work that we've done. A few other things that I did want to mention as far as, using nature. We are working very much, the Nature Conservancy has been doing a lot of work in the agricultural field. We feel very strongly about protecting grasslands and working directly with agricultural producers to see how we can work collaboratively to protect grasslands and grazing areas, to encourage the reestablishment of native grasslands, not only, of course, for grazing, but also for the purposes of biodiversity, flyover habitat for migratory birds. We're trying to make sure that working lands can stay working, and that we can try to keep ranch lands viable economically, because we don't want fragmentation of these large ranches in Texas, because it's very important to keep as much land together as possible, as we see that there's much more development and more people moving to Texas. So we're trying to work to make that something that we can continue to do. So we've worked with a lot of folks about conservation easements. They can still do a lot of production. We're working with them not only to keep their ranches working, but also trying to figure out how to preserve their water, looking at water efficiencies, doing water transactions, potentially if they don't need to use all of a water right that they have, we work with them to change potential crops to have more efficient water, efficient crops on their property, but then also have forbearance agreements so that maybe they don't have to pump as much from the river, so that we can use that for environmental flows and habitat purposes. So again, a lot of work that we're doing. And of course, in communities, and particularly the communities that we're seeing in the Hill Country and other places, we're trying to get them to have development practices that really promote the use of nature as you're thinking about managing stormwater runoff. And as communities are developing, how can we use rain gardens or buffer zones or other low impact development, nature-based solutions, so that we can ensure that we can slow down water, soak it in, spread it out, instead of having to have a lot of concrete structures that speed up water and threaten more flooding. We're trying to use nature to the best of our ability. Doesn't work in all cases, I know, but where it can work, we're trying to definitely promote the use of nature and keeping lands open so that we can mitigate the impacts of flooding. So with that, I know that's a lot. I would rather just start to have, answer questions that you may have as we continue the conversation.
Thank you, Suzanne. That was fabulous, hugely informative and very exciting and inspiring that we've accomplished so much so far, and now know how to do it, right? Now we know how to do it. We will open it up to question and answers. I would like to let you know that you can put your questions in the chat if you're not inclined to raise your hand, and we'll try to find you that way. Also, I want to take a minute to say, please add your name and your email address to the chat. For future reference, we can add you to our email list so that you'll get notices about our programs and events coming up, and we'll have you in our friend of CCCA list. Okay, and there is one question in the chat already. It says, thank you, Suzanne, for all the good TNC work in Texas, especially in Comal County, where we have several trifecta opportunities. How important is it to have the strong support of county commissioners for new projects going forward?
Well, that's a great question. I mean, obviously, any kind of work that we do requires partnerships, both with public entities as well as private individuals. And oftentimes, working with elected officials, I have found if they embrace the kinds of development that we're looking for to try to balance between people and nature, and we could have leadership amongst our elected leaders to figure out how to balance between the needs of people and nature, they can be a force in these leadership roles to really change the way that people are thinking. So I think it's critical to have important participation and support from county commissioners for work that we've done. I know here in Bexar County, worked quite a bit with Commissioner Wolf. I mean, Judge Wolf and commissioners. And that's how we did the mission reach of the River Improvements Project. That's how we're doing a lot of other projects in Bexar County, because they're seeing that the kind of community that they want here requires us to take care of our natural resources. I know a lot of times these right now, these hill country communities are really balancing growth with flooding and all the impacts that are coming from that. And it really takes someone that can stand up and think about those development, the Unified Development Codes and the development codes that are taking. And I know in counties, you don't have as much much authority in counties as you do in cities. So it really takes a lot of voluntary actions on the part of county commissioners to kind of raise awareness and be the kind of community that you want to be, since you don't really have as much regulatory authority as you do in a city.
Thank you, Suzanne. Good point about the authority. Was somebody else starting to speak? Helen.
I was starting to ask a question. This is sort of facetious, but maybe sort of not. On one of the maps, you showed the Pedernales River project area. And I'm wondering, could we just do one of those around the perimeter of Comal County and call that a project area and get some more focus from not just TNC, because you guys are doing a great job in Comal County, but all of the other partner groups that come together to make those big projects happen, like has been happening in the Pedernales River watershed. Which is a long way of saying we need a lot of help in Comal County because of the fast rate of growth and the incredible natural resource base that we have here. So anyway,
and Helen, I think that's a great, the thing that's made the Pedernales work, from my understanding, of course, I've only been here less than a year, but from what I hear from history, is that it takes that one property owner who is respected by others that bring others along. I mean, I know one of the property owners there has brought in like 3 or 4 other property owners that own a lot more property. And that initial property owner has bought more property and put it under conservation easement. So I think what it takes is, if we can get a coalition, and it's probably these folks here, of people that can talk to landowners and we can explain that a conservation easement does not mean that you can't use your land. I mean, I think there's a lot of people that are concerned that a conservation easement means you can't do anything on your land. And that's just not true. I mean, there are some limits, yes, to what you can do, because the purpose of a conservation easement is to conserve the natural resources in the land there. But you can have development envelopes. You can have roads. You can be able to do things that you want to do on your land. And I think sometimes from my experience being here, I think there's a lot of misunderstanding about what it means, and they feel like it's going to take control away from the landowner, and that's not the case. And I think maybe having these maybe we could host a session where we bring in some of the landowners from the Pedernales and talk to some of the people in Comal, landowner to landowner, not TNC in the middle of that, and have these conversations about how does it work? Do you like it? Do you not? What kind of tax benefits do you get, et cetera? Because I think that's really what people trust each other more so than they'll maybe trust an organization that they may think has an ulterior motive as an environmental organization.
Yeah, well, that's a great idea. And I'm happy to say that a couple of programs ago, we did have a couple of landowners, one from here actually, but one from I believe Kendall County, who had done conservation easements and shared their stories with us, which was really great because we had a few landowners from Comal on the thing. And then also brought in Commissioner Lon Shell from Hayes to share a lot of their stories. And I think, you know, that's all great. We need to find ways to get that message out more broadly here. Yeah.
And you know, I think it would, if there was a situation where that was a desire of the community and the county. I mean, you know, coming up with a Edwards Aquifer program like thing, you know, that you had funding, a funding source that a government says we want to do this.
Yeah.
It helps buying the conservation easements a lot better, because property owner, there is a financial transaction that happens with a conservation easement, and sometimes the landowners don't want to do that. That we at the Nature Conservancy sometimes have used, there are programs available through NRCS and US Fish and Wildlife and Texas Parks and Wildlife that we can use money to buy those conservation easements. But again, that is a competitive process. But if the county saw this as a real threat and felt like there was a need to do this, maybe there's some public money that could come available, and then there could be a science-based decision-making process. Okay, which lands are we going to prioritize? You know, what are the threatened ecosystems that we want to save first? And then do something like that, that the community could agree on. Obviously, if it had to go to the voters, y'all would have to understand how that program would have to be set up. But if the threat is real and the community at large agrees, I think you could probably find an opportunity to fund that through a public referendum.
Yeah.
You know, the county here did it through a hotel motel tax. So, I mean, you could figure out that.
Yeah, that's very encouraging. We have another question in the chat. If I can go back to the Honey Creek Ranch issue. The question, first, thank you for the great presentation. And then he asks, how big a wrench in the Honey Creek Ranch deal is that water supply contract we've read about?
Well, you know, we are continuing to work with all the partners at the table. That's it's a big one. We have to work through it. I'm not going to suggest that it's not something that is something that we need to definitely work through. But we have everybody at the table right now, which is important. We have the water supply provider, we have the owner, Texas Parks and Wildlife, we have, you know, opportunity, you know, engineers and the school district and everybody working on it together. So it is a hurdle, and we're working hard to get through it. The water supply organization has invested a lot already in developing that system. They've had a lot of easements already. They have pipes in the ground. They've been working to deliver water to this property. So it's something that we have to discuss and work through, but they see the benefit, they understand the ecological benefits of trying to protect this area.
Great, that's great. And I have another question related to a different problem we have here in Comal. And the question is, have y'all approached the quarries about acquiring their land that is no longer in use for reclamation? Or is it only conservation focused?
I am not aware if we've worked directly with the quarries. I'm not aware of any work that we've done in that regard. I can double check on that and get back to you or Helen and see if there's any work that we've done there. I know in Bexar County, there have been some conversations talking with quarries about potentially using them for flood purposes. To instead of doing other detention facilities, using them and purposefully flooding them, because when they are in the watershed, they do provide a benefit because they can fill up. Now, granted, they recharge pretty quickly in the case if they're over, most of them are over the aquifer because it's the limestone that they're wanting. But I don't know if there's been any conversation with the quarry operators that have been abandoned if they could be used to mitigate flooding so that you wouldn't have to build other detention facilities as Comal County is growing, and you're going to get more impervious cover over time. But that could be a way. But no, I'm not aware of anything that TNC has done, but I could double check on that.
Yeah, or just keep your ear out as you hear about them. You know, we're interested. And here's another question for you. Thank you for your work is the first comment. The question is there a long-range plan to protect the riparian corridor statewide?
That's a good question. And I don't know of anything statewide. I know river basin by river basin, different river authorities are doing different things, some more aggressively than others. The one thing that's happening that I think is a way that we'll get to that point is, as y'all know, the state is embarked on a statewide flood planning process, similar to the statewide water process that's been going on for many, many years. This is new. These watershed-based committees have been formed and are starting the process of coming up with flood control programs that can be, or projects that can be funded by the state. One of the aspects of this that we worked real hard here at the River Authority, when I was at the River Authority, is to have that program really look hard at nature-based solutions. Now, we all know that protecting the riparian corridor is critical, not only for stability of rivers and having a good floodplain and making sure that the floodplain stays intact, and there's good regulations for that, and that you have good root structures and all the things that are necessary to keep a riparian corridor protected. Those, I think, are going to come as there's more money available for these nature-based solutions. And I'm finding in these meetings that I've seen, that I've participated in, that more and more people are wanting that. They say, don't channelize the river, don't take out the natural aspects, protect the floodplain, figure out what we can do, keep, and a lot of these smaller communities don't have good regulations of protecting the floodplain. And I think that's critical to protecting these riparian areas, and trying to figure out how to do that in a way that people will embrace and won't feel like they're losing the use of their land is going to be critical, because if we don't protect the floodplains, it causes all kinds of trouble in a watershed. It just, you're just moving the water around. Watersheds function, and they need to have floodplains. So anything y'all can do to ensure the protection of your floodplain is critical to the future. And I think this flood planning process is going to recognize that.
Good. That'll help lead us into the other parts that will help. Now, here's a good question. Listen to this one. She starts off, elephant in the room. How do we rapidly and massively increase the amount of funding available to protect the hill country? Most landowners can't afford to donate conservation easements, but can't keep up with the rising property values. How can we get the billions of dollars we need to protect the critical needs of the hill country? In 50 words or less, Suzanne.
Yes, I think that's a great question, and the one that we're all kind of trying to figure out. And I think that there's going to be a lot of money potentially coming through some of these bills, the infrastructure bill, as well as the budget reconciliation, if all these things happen. Lots more money funding into nature-based solutions. And I think that preservation of land is something that's been identified. So more money going to NRCS, more money going to U.S. Fish and Wildlife, more going to the Restore American Wildlife Act, places like that, to try to have more money for these kinds of programs is going to be critical. But I do think that building something local, they did the same thing in Travis County has a program that's very similar to what we did in Bear County. They had a what's theirs is called, I know that the City of Austin has one that's called the Water Quality Protection and Land Program. and the Travis County has one that's called, it's an open space. I don't know the name of it. It doesn't have it on here, but it was a proposition that was passed back in the late 90s to protect water, protect land in Travis County. And it was something that Travis County did separate from the city of Austin. And I think that that established what we know is the Balcones Preserve system that I showed on that map. And there is really opportunities for counties to get more engaged in open space protection. And I really think that maybe I can see if we have any information about that, what funding sources they used. But I do think that Travis County was funding that program. And it is going to take funding at a local level to try to get these things done, very similar to what we did with the Edwards Aquifer program. I tell you, all those people would not have engaged in the conservation easement program on the Edwards if there had not been funding from that program. It just wouldn't have happened. So the funding was critical to its success. So you're right, it takes a lot of money to do these kinds of programs. And it does take it's going to take public funding to make it happen. And I think it's important in a way because we want people to keep this land in their families. And if these taxes continue to go up and they feel like they can't, make a living off the land, you've seen it. People are taking big acreage and they are, just converting it into smaller lots. And then they're developing more impervious cover on all these lots. And you're seeing it over and over and over again. So it is a problem, and we definitely need to work on that. And I think a referendum could be something that could be put in front of the voters to see if they're interested in protecting the land.
I just wrote that down. That's all the questions in the chat. How about some hands? Anybody want to raise their hand and ask a question?
I was just going to tell Suzanne that it is one of the main things that this group, and we have a group called the Comal Conservation Partners Group, that are working towards getting the county commissioners court willing to put a bond up. But there's a culture here that's quite different than other counties around us. And so it's taking a lot of conversation over a longer period of time, but we are definitely working towards that. And just as a little side note, I'll share that, and this is a hopeful sign from the Commissioners Court. They put in their budget for next year and Parks and Open Space master planning process that I think would go to what you were describing earlier. And then also approved applying for one of the Clean Water State Revolving Fund applications in light of the infrastructure money coming in.
Yes.
So we're getting in line to receive some of that money, and they asked for 30 million. So they're beginning to realize that it's going to take some local funding matched with others, public and private, to be able to do some of this work we're trying to do. And one other thing where TNC might be able to help is we have a habitat conservation plan for the county, but we don't have a 500-acre patch mitigation preserve yet. So what money has come in through that mitigation process has been spent in Bandera County. And we're trying to fix that. And quite honestly, the county commissioners are, they're committed to trying to do that. They recognize that's a problem. So we're looking for land projects. We're looking for the money to do them. Yeah. We've got
And that points to the two pieces of that issue. One is identifying the money, which is a big problem in itself. And the other one is identifying landowners who want to be a part of this. Like you gave the example of a landowner, a rancher, somebody trying to do farming or agriculture who is having trouble with the property taxes making ends meet because they're not producing as much as they could have when they were younger. And the developer comes knocking on the door and says, I'll give you all this. I'll give you this big bag of money if you let me take your land and chop it up and put a bunch of concrete on it. And they feel like they're between a rock and a hard spot. So we've got to be able to get to the landowners that have the property that this money could be used to provide conservation easements for, or outright purchases or donated easements.
Absolutely. And I think that is, you know, the land is their livelihood. And that is, we need to make sure that the land can stay in their hands. And the best way to do that is to, and I think, you know, you get tax benefits with the conservation easement, but you have to pay for the conservation easement before you get the tax abatement. So, I mean, tax benefits. So it's one of those chicken and egg sort of situations. And that's why I think some funding from some of these programs would help. You know, they do have programs through NRCS, the ag bill, and the federal agricultural bill. And I think that they're going to look at trying to increase that amount to help landowners with this kind of conservation work. But again, it could take time and it's going to be very competitive. But I do think if there's ways to work together as a community, you'll have more control over it also, and be able to set your own parameters about priorities of lands that you do want to protect. But working with the landowners is critical. If they feel that this is something that's going to be put on them versus that they were part of the design of it, it's going to be far better if they're sitting at the table with you designing the program of what they think would be right for them than you just saying, this is what we want to do. So I would encourage you to be very, very collaborative and listen to them because they know their land better than anybody.
Right. Suzanne, how have y'all helped landowners that don't have cash pay their upfront costs to do like an easement where, you know, there might be $70,000 worth of, you know, costs to actually get to the point of doing an easement. And so where does that funding come from? I mean, we've started a thing at the New Braunfels Community Foundation that we call the Comal Conservation Land Fund. Correct me, guys, if I got it wrong. Trying to build up a fund that we could use to loan to landowners to pay their upfront costs. Because have you guys run into that a lot, and how have you helped the landowners get around that?
Yeah, I mean, I think some of that sometimes is built into the transaction cost that
Right.
with the deal. I don't know, Helen, if I'm not aware of any advance. I know that we've sometimes, if sort of gotten, when we've gotten funding from other organizations or, you know, some of these programs I mentioned, that will pay them back for any of those costs that they've incurred. But I can double check to see if there's anything that we've used, but I do know that there's programs that we access for those kinds of costs, but I'll ask
for the upfront costs. I'm pretty sure that the cost can be regrouped in the transaction, but
yes,
you know, just initially to be able to get an appraisal and get a survey and, you know, the other things that landowners need to do to prep for closing on an easement. That's one of the things we've been trying to solve, is where to help them with that.
Find that out. Okay, good question.
Other questions? Just chime in case I can't see you.
Yeah, hi. My name's Gary. I'm with Preserve Our Hill Country Environment. And I'm a fairly new resident here in Texas. And I know that the Nature Conservancy has participated in other states in mitigation banking and mitigation credits. And although I don't really believe that Texas has the regulatory framework or structure to, at this current time, require the mitigation. If it were ever which I think a lot of people are working on to get TCEQ to really become basically an environmental group that protects the environment and not just a permitting agency. If it goes in that direction, then there's the potential for requiring mitigation for all sorts of projects like the one that I live in, Vintage Oaks. And, even though it's large lot, there's still a tremendous amount of impact on the wildlands. And so that impact would require mitigation. Mitigation is imposed through the regulatory agency, and a developer then can go out and purchase mitigation credits on land that you would identify as worthy of preserving based on a point system. Have you explored that at all?
Well, we do have a mitigation bank that we're actually going to start managing that is in Bandera County near, it's kind of all in that area near Los Maples, Love Creek, our preserve that we have over there. And that was established as mitigation for golden cheek warbler habitat near, I believe it was up near Camp Bullis. In that area, there was a development, and it was required as part of that mitigation habitat conservation program up there near Camp Bullis. And they bought land over here in the Bandera County area to mitigate that, to mitigate their impact. So yes, I mean, I think that that's happening. That was through a U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. So I guess the habitat conservation plan that y'all have, is that through U.S. Fish and Wildlife?
Well, they have to give the permit, but they basically give over to the local, well, in this case, it's the county, the sort of the enforcement power and the permitting process. So it's just supposedly an easier way for developers to get to take habitat than having to go through Fish and Wildlife. So it's voluntary here. There are very few projects that take habitat that have put money into this mitigation thing. So it's not working very well yet here in Comal County, but we do have the structure for it.
Yeah.
What does Joel say? He's shaking his head.
Not working very well.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I mean, there could be maybe some opportunity to look at that. I don't know if that structure can be changed at all, but
yeah, I think there are.
It has to have teeth to make it work, right?
Right.
Well, we have a county engineer who says he's not going to enforce it. So,
That's not good.
real hard to
Maybe
do
we
that.
need a new county engineer.
Are you an engineer, Gary?
Like so much else with the Endangered Species Act, though, there needs to be citizen enforcement, which is not enforcement, but it's citizen eyeballs out in the landscape to see where the threats are happening, or even ideally, and I think Joel was helping us with some of this, to get in with the government agencies that do permitting and try to get there for their very earliest permits. So it's coming before it's already too late, and you can try to make sure that they know they have to comply with the Endangered Species Act and try to get the compliance that way. But it takes citizen action to make that possible, because they don't have enough staff basically to make sure that everybody who should be is complying with the law.
That's a
So,
problem. Yeah.
and I know in some other places, probably Travis County, where there is the citizen suit provision in the Endangered Species Act. So if a citizen sees that somebody's taking habitat and not doing it permitted with a permit, they can sue them and then take it to court, and that forces compliance. We don't want to go there, but we want to try to make sure that those people who are going to take habitat here know that they have to mitigate it.
Yeah.
But we have to have more eyeballs out there on the landscape and in the permitting offices to do that.
Well, and I think it's a culture of conservation that you also need to get throughout the community and throughout the leadership. If the leadership feels that conservation is critical, then they can, from the dais, say that every, development needs to be, give us a report on what developments are coming up and how they're complying and are they located, give that
Yeah.
exposure to it on every single commissioner's court agenda. Let's go through these and see if they fall in the zone. Everything that falls in the zone, we want to see. I mean, there's things that they can do to make it more, public, so that there is eyes on it, and so that the citizens don't have to be out there trying to figure it out. You've got elected officials that are helping you put the eyes on it too.
Right. Absolutely. That would be wonderful. Yeah. So.
Anybody else? Comments or questions?
Oh. Hello.
Yeah, Jack.
This is a comment. I want to thank CCCA for bringing another good talk today. You've given several over the years that have really been useful in the work that I'm doing for one of the groups here. So just keep it up. And I see progress being made with our county commissioners, and I hope that's going to be paying more dividends in the near future. So just keep it up, and we want to help you whenever we can. So that's it.
Thank you.
Thank
Jack.
you, Jack. And thanks. It takes a village, as they say.
Thank
And
you
we're
so
all-
much.
Thank
So
you.
Suzanne, thank you very much for coming and sharing with us tonight. This is really inspiring, of course, to see what TNC is able to do. And we look forward to partnering with you guys on some projects as we get them in the pipeline here. So
We would love to do that, and look forward to having more conservation in Comal County. It's very important. So thank you very much. Thank you.
Appreciate
Thank you, Suzanne. And thank you all for attending and being with us tonight. I appreciate you all. Please remember to put your email in the chat, your name and email in the chat, if you like, please. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time. And don't forget the big give on September 23rd.
Thank you.
Good night.
bye.